morning. Today I started working. I'm going to uppot a few of my fig trees, which I'll show you in a minute. And I started shoveling the manure and the compost, which is right there. And this side is the real fine compost, well-rotted compost. This is over a year old, and so is that horse manure there on this side, right there. And you see where I keep it. I keep it covered so that no water can get into it all winter and all summer too. And I keep, every year I go get some more from a horse farmer that's right down the road, and he gives it to me for free. And I store it for a long, it's well rotted already when I get it, but he gives me the manure, and it's much fresher, and it would burn plants if you started using it right away. So I like to keep it an extra year. And this is a controlled situation where the moisture slowly evaporates from it, but it continues to rot and season, and now it will not hurt anything. You could just add it right to your potting mix, which is what I'm going to do today. And it's the same with the house compost. You can see, let me see if I can get the shovel in it. You can see how fine it is. There's peanut shells in there, there's egg shells in there, there's just about everything that you would have during the normal course of running your home, and all of the different various types of ingredients that can go into a compost, which is just about anything organic, with the exception you don't put meats and things like that or cheeses. But certainly when you're cleaning vegetables and you're taking off the tops, or you have anything left over, or you have a few tomatoes that you kept in the refrigerator too long, or some kind of vegetable, and you throw it in the compost heap. Why throw it away? And eggshells, peanut shells, anything that you can put in there that's organic, because it is so rich in nutrients, and it's going to help your plants, wherever you use it, grow so much better. And that includes, you can put it under your tomato plants in your yard, in your garden plants, any kind of produce that you're growing. But certainly when I plant fig trees in the ground. Now to this, I'm going to show you, I have other videos on this subject, but since I'm doing this, I thought I'd show exactly how much of this I use. I use a lot of this. And then over here I'll have some soil, okay, which I have to dig up. Now the reason why I keep the soil like this away, stored, and I have quite a bit of it, and I'm going to be shoveling that in. I just can't do it now because I only have one hand left, okay, and the other to hold the camera with, the phone. But I've got dirt in different spots here, okay, underneath these tarps. And the reason why I do that is to kill the nematodes. I'm pretty sure it's nematode free when I put it here, but I store it sometimes for years in a pile. You can see how old that tarp is. And when I need it, I add that mixture to my mix. Now why do I do that? I explained it in other videos. I like to put soil, I like to add soil to my potting mixes. Now to this I'm going to add some potting mix too, some Miracle-Gro potting mix. I'll show you what I use. Sometimes I use different things. It doesn't really matter that much. It's not that crucial. But for consistency, you want to add it because it's light, you know, and some of this is pretty heavy. And of course the soil is going to be heavy. But the reason why I add the soil, and I've explained this before, is because I like my potting mixes to pretty much mimic regular conditions or ground conditions that would be found in nature naturally. I don't like a full potting mixture. I don't like it. I never did. My mixtures are heavier. You can look at my other videos. You can see the product. You can see the fig trees and the figs. But I like it to be heavier and therefore retain moisture better and for a longer period of time, so I don't have to water them incessantly, like a slave. Okay, I don't have to water them as much, and they derive a great deal of nourishment from all of this, and from the regular earth, from the ground, from the dirt, and the consistency of the dirt, the heaviness of it. Also, I add in the potting soil to flake it up, to fluff it up. I add a little bit of perlite, I do, and this is what I generally use. And then I add some garden soil. I like adding that, and I like mixing it all together, which I can't really demonstrate right now. But some people have asked me, well, how much lime do you use? And I use crushed oyster shells, which I'll get to that in a minute. But how much do I use? Watch this. I mean, I use a lot. I like lime. We've spoken about how figs have grown very successfully in Mediterranean, all along the Mediterranean part of the world, and the ground is very, very high in volcanic ash and lime. There's places where there's been volcanoes and such. We've talked about that. And so lime is something that I like to use, and I like to use a lot of it. And I'm not afraid to use it, and I've never used too much of it where I had any problems. I like it, and of course, your compost is going to be a bit acidic, and so is the manure. So you want to offset that too by using a good amount of lime. And crushed oyster shells. I love crushed oyster shells. And any kind of crustacean, like if you have crushed crab shells, anything like that, put it in there for the calcium and the nutrients, I put some volcanic, I've explained this again in other videos. I put some of this volcanic stuff that I have, that's all the minerals that came from volcanic areas. I add that to it. I'm not afraid to add, and Epsom salt, a little Epsom salt, and a little bit of iron. These things you could add later too. You can add them later. So you don't have to be fanatical about having it just right when you first mix it. But I'm going to add a little bit of fertilizer to it, add a little bit of nutrients, not a lot, but that's 3-month fertilizer, so it's not going to burn. It's not going to burn my plants when I up-pot them. And then I like to use, here I'm running out of materials now, but I like to use a lot of organic things. And I'm going to add some of this. These are for my blueberries and things. They're acidic in nature, and so I add those to my blueberry patches once a year or twice. But I'm going to add some of this to the mix, and some of this, some of the garden soil, and I'm going to add some potting mix, and then I'm just going to shovel it up and mix it real well, and that's going to suffice. Now remember, I'm adding the soil. I can't show you that right now. I just can't. And I can't show you adding more potting mix, and I can't show you exactly what I do, but it's going to be a lot more voluminous when I'm finished adding all these things. And then I'm going to shovel them, maybe add a little more lime, some fertilizer, and shovel it in. And when I get it to where it's sort of like being an old Italian cook or something. I remember watching my grandmom and my mother. They never measured anything. They knew just what to put in, proportionally. And the recipes always came out fantastic, and they were wonderful. And we just all enjoyed their cooking so very much. And it's sort of like that. I wing it, kind of, But I know basically what I want to adhere to. The basic fundamental principles is that I don't want to have just potting mix. It's too light. It requires too much watering. It doesn't present, I don't think, a natural presentation to the figs. The fig tree is a creature. It's a living organism, and it did not evolve living in peat moss, which is one of your major ingredients in some of these potting mixes. It doesn't live in things like that. And it's a medium that's created by man, and it can work, and it can work well. But it's high. You have to really be on your toes to keep the moisture in it. You have to water it so often, especially during the solstice like right now, It requires so much watering, and the trees, I just don't think they take to it as well. I know they don't. They don't take to it as well as they do something that more resembles, a mix that more resembles real earth conditions that they find in nature, where they grow naturally, or grow, I think, much better. So now you've gotten an idea of how I do this. I keep these containers, and I keep the compost coming, and I put it in my mixes, and I really have good results with it. I like it. I don't want to get too far off the subject, but here you see a lot of the dead wood that we talked about before. I'm going to run another video and bring you up to speed on the dieback situation here. But you can see I had a lot of dead wood. This is close to the field with no shelter at all. Nothing from the wind, the fierce winds coming across the field. And a few species, a few things survived, like the Desert King type fig, which has a very winter hardy. Many others have succumbed. I've dug some of them out. They just died. They died back completely. And I talked about it more in my other videos in Fig Busters, winter dieback. And I had 1, 2, 3. One was just an introductory. The number 1 was an introductory where I talked. And then the second and the third showed you all of this about 3 weeks or a month ago. But you can see some of it's coming back. Some of it's growing from the bottom. I've got new shoots coming up. Okay, so the roots didn't die completely. Most of them do have new shoots coming up. Although this is Azores Dark. Although Azores Dark was not very winter hardy, although it belongs to the Mount Etna types. It's a Mount Etna derivative or variant, and it died all the way back, but it's coming back. So hopefully I'll be able to cover it, because it's a good variety. I like it as a little different than your typical Mount Etna type or hardy Chicago type. Look at this. Here we go with the Japanese beetles. Not good. I've got to go get the hormone. I get a hormone over at Home Depot, and you hang it up. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but you hang this little trap, and it's got a pheromone in it that attracts them, and boy, I tell you, you catch thousands of them, thousands, and it alleviates the pressure on your fig trees and your persimmon trees and everything else that you might be growing in your yard completely. You know, raspberries, blackberries, strawberries, blueberries, anything. Here's another dead tree. You can see that it's coming up though from the roots, and so I'm going to cut that all away today, cut all the dead wood away. And here's a Celeste tree that was a young tree that died back completely, which, hey, it was right out in the open, and I didn't use any winter mulch, which I definitely recommend winter mulch, and I talked about that in my other videos. But you can see the roots weren't killed. You can see it coming back. Okay, now here's one that didn't come back. Interestingly enough, let's see, what is the name of this? Oh yeah, okay. I talked about that in another video. It's a mount. I don't know what it is. It's a long story. I can't tell it again right now, but I told it before. Okay, but it's dead. Okay, so some varieties had to be removed completely. Here's some Celeste that I had growing, and they died back. Okay, I had them growing here in a little special spot. They all died back, but they're all making new roots, new shoots rather, from the roots. So I only have 2 there that I care about right now, and they're very special, but we'll have to talk about that at another time. I have them growing in my yard in different places, and this is 7A, but I also have it in 7B. And I'll be going on and on about them in the future. I want to make an individual video about the Celeste variants. I want to just really go over it in detail. But here you can see a lot of damage. A lot of damage was done. Now, let me see. I might put this on pause for a second and show you just how nice the figs are doing that had some protection from the wind, from the northwest wind, the cold winds near the house, and they're doing now well, and I featured them before. But let's take a quick look. Before we take a look at those other fig trees that had shelter or partial shelter, these are the trees I'm going to be up potting. Okay, they're not very big, But I need to up pot some of these. Some of these are, I've talked about them before, they're Black Madeira. And we talked about that before. And Improved Celeste and Champagne. And I've got to up, this is a Smith. And you can see how many figs there are on this tree. There's just a whole bunch of figs on here. It's very prolific. And it's in a smaller container. And I want to go to maybe, I don't know, something larger, maybe a 7-gallon or a 10-gallon, probably a 10-gallon for this. Okay, and this one I'm taking and putting in 7B. I'm putting that in the ground, so I'm not going to up pot this. This is just going directly in the ground. This is a Ronde Bordeaux, and it has a lot of figs on it too. And I've been hardening it off from the sun, which we talked about before, keeping it under this immense tree in the shade, and I've been moving it out. You can see where I had it before. You see how where I had it before, more under the protection of the shade. Okay, several of them, and I had them staked with rebarb, and I slowly moved them out further so that they get more and more sun. And now they're still getting sun, and I don't know what time it is, but it's pretty late in the morning. Okay, so they're getting plenty of sun now, and so they're hardened off, all of them. So now it's time for me to up pot them and keep them and move them out entirely in the sun, where they will stay for the remainderment of the summer until they produce all their figs, which there are many, many, many figs, as you can see. And this Ronde Bordeaux is going to be planted in the ground in 7B, and I have a place already worked out for it. It's a beautiful specimen. It's a wonderful tree, and this is too. This is another Ronde Bordeaux, and it's in a little bit bigger pot. I'm going to put this one in a larger pot. Okay, I don't know exactly what size yet until I get working on it. But there's an abundance of fig fruits on this one too, all over the place, as you can see. I just love Ronde Bordeaux, and I love the taste of it. I love the fig. I love the variety. I just love its earliness. The fact that, unlike a lot of other figs, it just keeps making figs. After it starts to get ripe, they just keep making more figs. It just grows. The new growth keeps going. It just keeps making more figs. And there's time enough in the season to eat them. Figs that you can't even see right now. Okay, like these little rascals there. You see that? They're going to all mature, although they're much smaller than these. And it just keeps producing. You can see them, different sizes. And then new growth will grow out of this, especially when I get it out in the full sun. And when I up pot it, okay, and give it more nourishment, the new growth will just start to grow like crazy. And it will just keep producing all the way up until the fall. It's a great tree. This one I'm going to keep in a pot, this Ronde Bordeaux. But this one I'm going to plant in the ground. And I have several in the ground here that did spectacularly and did not take any damage from the winter winds. And hold on, we're going to take a look. This is a successful hardy Chicago type. An abundance of figs all over it. It did well. It's in the ground. It's been in the ground for several years. And oh, here we are with those Japanese beetles again. But there's quite a few figs on it, I'm very happy to say. And it fared very well, even though it was exposed to the winter winds. It being a Mount Etna type and known for its winter hardiness, it survived well. And it's an older tree. And it's doing just quite marvelously. I'm very happy that I'm going to be getting a very big crop of delicious figs from this tree. Remember, Home Depot has the pheromone. We'll just walk over here quickly. There's another Mount Etna type. And it also, it's doing very well. And the winter didn't harm it much, not at all. It's got an abundance, a huge production of figs all over it. which I will later enjoy in about a month or so, or thereabouts. Okay, I wanted to include something else, but I'll make a separate video. I'm going to be pruning a persimmons tree, and I want to video that and show you what I'm going to be doing. It's sort of a special situation that I wanted to discuss in greater detail. Here I just have, here's a Peter's honey, a very large Peter's honey, and you can see it's just look at it. It's so successful. It didn't take any real damage from the winter. It's doing really, really well, and it's has an abundance of figs on it, and so does my Celeste. And there it is, completely unharmed by the winter. But remember, this is a microclimate. We talked about this in the other videos, and it makes so much difference. You saw the figs out there behind the barn that had no protection, and you saw how much damage they received from the cold winds, and these received nothing because this microclimate protected them. The winds come from there, that direction, the northwest, and the house protects the figs from the wind. And believe me when I tell you that the wind factor, the chill factor, is very important, and it's a relevant factor that you have to consider. You don't want your trees to be in the wind because the chill factor does kill them or harm them significantly. So just protecting them from the wind is a significant move in the right direction. Just that, but then some other protections are generally in order too in 7A, where I am here. But this is a Ronde Bordeaux, and it did marvelously. I'm so happy. I have just one dead branch. What would explain that? I don't know. I don't know really, but I got to cut that off soon. That's what I'm doing today. I've got so much on my work order sheet today to complete. It just goes on and on. But there are a lot of figs on this tree, and they're going to all come to fruition, and I just love this tree. I have another larger Ronde Bordeaux, and there you can see it. Look at that thing. It's just huge, and it is also loaded with fruit everywhere. There's just so much. There's an abundance of fruit, and again, different size fruits, and this new growth will continue to grow and just keep producing new figs all summer long. It's amazing, and they grow and they mature faster, they ripen faster, okay, than other figs, most every other fig. And so the figs that appear on this new growth, even though it's later in June now, I don't know the exact date, but it's maybe 3 or 4 days away from the solstice or something. But June 20th, maybe it's June the 25th or something like that. But you would think, well, these will never get ripe. Yes, they will. Yes, they will. These will get ripe because it's Ronde Bordeaux, and they only need something like a 60-day turnaround, which is really great. This fig produces so many. It's one of the most valuable figs in my collection. I just love Ronde Bordeaux, and you can see that it's not damaged at all from the winter cold. And it's not that close to the house. It's about 10 feet, 12 feet from the house. But again, the wind factor, it's very, very important. Try to plant your fig trees where there is shelter. And here's a Celeste that did not get damaged. You saw the ones that did out there in the wind, and look at it. I mean, it's going to make 100 figs, more than that. There's just figs everywhere on this tree, and I'm looking forward to every single one of them. This is a special variety that once belonged to my father, and I love this tree so much. It's definitely different than a lot of Celeste varieties or variants. It's a different variant. Okay, so here we have another Mount Etna type that's doing really well, recovered. I had a couple dead branches. I cut them off, but it's recovering very well. New branches are growing nicely. I'm going to train them soon, like I am going to this multi-black, which is doing really well, and it recovered very nicely, which is also a Mount Etna type, a little different. I like it. It's one of my favorites of the Mount Etna types. You can see there's a lot of figs on it. okay? And there's some nice branches here that I can train back and straighten out to get this tree to be have more girth and a better presentation, a better structure. But you can see, look at this. There's the fig orchard here is just doing so nicely. And there's so many very beautiful trees. Here I lost a few. On this Alma, I cut them off. You can see where I cut them off. But others are growing and it's making fruit. It's not as much fruit as it had last year. It took a little hit, but I can tell you, all of these will get ripe. They will all get ripe. I have this featured in other videos. And here's Tiger, LSU Tiger, and more of these darn Japanese beetles. I've got to go get that hormone trap. And LSU Tiger fared very well with the wind. It died back there behind the barn. It died pretty much. But here, where it had the shelter from the wind, it did very well. It maybe had a couple little branches that I took off, dead branches, not much. And you can see that there's an abundance of fruit on LSU Tiger as well. And they will all get ripe. It's early enough that they will all get ripe, these figs. And I have these on other videos. And here I have O'Rourke, and there's so many figs on it. It did so well. It had the protection of the house. You can see that. O'Rourke, LSU O'Rourke. And here is another Peter's Honey, a smaller version of the one I showed you earlier in this video. And it also did very well because it had the protection of the house. It did very well. And there's a couple little dead branches here and there, nothing really significant. The ends, the tender ends, but for the most part, any of the branches that had already developed and had any size to them survived, and it's very fruitful. It's going to be extremely, and there's some also breba on this. There are breba, and you dig down into this tree, it's very thick. And they'll get ripe. One of my favorite figs in the world. Well, in my world that I've ever grown, are the breba of the Peter's Honey. And so, of course, you have to preserve last year's wood in order to enjoy them, which is another reason why I am a big advocate of wrapping or protecting figs in 7A so that you can enjoy the breba. Because if you cut them down or if you allow them to die back, you might get a second crop. The second crop the following year won't be as much, there won't be as many, they won't be as good, they won't be as early, and the first crop won't exist. You will get no breba. And of course, Peter's Honey produces a lot of breba, so that's one of the reasons why I like it so much and like protecting it. Okay, I've got to cut this video short. I've got so much work to do today. I have so much more I could talk to you about, but we'll have to save it for another time. And with that, hundreds and hundreds of figs on this tree. Good day.